Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another breakfast with Blaha. And sitting here eating some fat-free Greek yogurt. Let's talk about issue with vegan diets. This has come up a lot again. A lot of recent debates by people on this discussing the efficacy and the ethics of it. And look, if you choose to be an ethical vegan, that's your call. I think it's silly. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's from people who have a completely detached view of the cycle of life, people who have a completely detached view of our place in the cycle of life, um, and who have these bizarre notions about comparing animals to people. I personally have zero ethical issues with killing and eating an animal. I've done it many times. I have no problem with it. So when people say it's morally superior, it's not. If that's your perspective, that's fine. But I hold that position is ludicrous. I have no ethical issue with it at all. And I will kill and eat more animals in my life. I have no problem with it. But again, I'm not detached from the natural order of things in the cycle of life. These people are. And they probably have very natural lifestyles. And they have no idea of their place in the world anyways, because again, they've grown up in a completely artificial environment, detached from their food, detached from everything in nature. But let's come over to the real issue here. You will have people who argue that it is possible to make just as good a gains as an athlete, in theory, on paper, with a well-planned vegan diet as it is on an omnivorous diet. Notice I said omnivorous, not carnivore, because carnivore has its own set of problems. And let's think about that for a moment. Okay, it's possible. But let's step back and look at this for a moment. Being at your best from a fitness perspective is extremely hard. It has a steep learning curve. People make very large amounts of mistakes. Doing something to intentionally make it more difficult and more complex means that you actually just want to make things more difficult and more complex more than you care about your goals. Or I think then people can use it as an excuse as to why they didn't get results. Well, I did really good for a vegan. Well, you're still placed 1751st in the world. Congratulations. Whatever it is you competed in. That's is really good for a vegan. Because vegans don't win. So, and here's why. It comes back to that other point. It's hypothetically possible. Sure, but it makes it more difficult. Makes it more complex, makes it more difficult. And your margin for error is completely different. And if you make a lot of mistakes on your vegan diet early on, you're going to have permanent problems that are going to impede you forever. So let's come over and look at the big issues we get. Usually that B12 deficiency. A lot of vegans early on, they jump into this, they don't supplement B12. A lot of people out there, experts, and some data that would suggest that the neurological damage of that is semi-permanent. In other words, you get hurt doing a vegan diet for this deficiency long term, you're never going to be right again. I know multiple former vegans I'm friends with who have suffered GI tract problems that are now permanent. The excessive fiber intake ended up causing some damage and micro-tearing and problems with their gut lining. They still suffered issues years after not being a vegan. Again, oops, I shouldn't have tried to eat that much fiber. And that's the problem we run into. People can say, well, look, you can still get lots of protein. Yeah, but what's the fiber load on that? And as a general rule, look, fiber is useful for fat loss. Fiber is useful for health. Fiber is useful for metabolic purposes. Excessive fiber can become problematic. It can create health problems. It can damage your gut and cause things like anal fissures and all sorts of stuff, right? Yeah. It cause hemorrhoids. you get a lot of problems, a lot of potential health problems. And these are serious health issues. That's going to affect your ability to be athletic and fit. Then we have the distress from it, the discomfort it causes. Again, the fiber intakes often people are trying to, that are end up hitting on these diets, because again, trying to get enough protein causes, again, gastrointestinal distress, makes it harder to train, makes it harder to function, makes it harder to recover, malabsorption of nutrients. These become problems. So then their solution is they have to load up on protein shakes, because remember, a gram of plant protein is not the same as a gram of animal source protein. It's not about just grams, it's about bioavailability. And I'm not going to, again, you're going to have some jackass who will chime in with, well, but a lot of them are complete proteins. I did not say incomplete proteins. I said bioavailability. If you don't know the difference, don't make stupid ass arguments. Now, so people will say, well, what is bioavailability? I'm glad that you asked that. It's your ability to absorb the amino acids, not the completeness of the profile. It is the ability of them to go from your digestive system through your intestinal wall lining into the bloodstream. Their bioavailability, it's lower. How much lower depends on the plant, doesn't it? Some of them only lose 20%, some of them are 50%. So there's some plant proteins that you're only getting half of the protein that you eat. See the problem here? People say, oh, well, I'm loading this up and I'm getting my 200 grams from plant protein. Well, that's not going to be the equivalent of 200 grams of animal protein. It's not. It is not going to be the same. Depending upon the protein source, it might be 100 grams, might be up to 140 grams. It's not 200. So what are we stuck with? Drinking a bunch of protein shakes all the time. Again, quality of life, dealing with nonsense. Put it this way, protein shakes, even the best tasting ones, you get old of very, very, very fast. Even the whey ones that are good, the ones that taste really good, because whey is not particularly good, it's kind of nasty, because casein's pretty bad. They have to put a lot of flavor in them. And it ends up being overwhelming. You get really sick of it real quick. If you're drinking multiple of them a day, it's not pleasant. Over the vegan ones, they're even worse. I've had vegan protein shakes. Some of the supposedly good tasting ones, they taste like hammered dog shit. Admit it. Don't try to spin it off that they don't. You guys who are trying to drink them, you know that they do. You're going to have to drink a lot of them. I mean, you're going to be drinking 4, 5, 6 shakes a day. It's a general rule. It's how many servings of this stuff you're going to be knocking down day after day after day after day, trying to gain muscle, optimize your muscle growth, athleticism, strength. All right, this is no longer convenient. And again, still having to make sure you don't get nutrient deficiencies. You're having to add a lot of supplements, having to balance all these things, having to try to focus on getting that protein in. It is not easy. It makes this whole process more difficult. And it's already a difficult process with a steep learning curve. Throwing this variable in here to make it harder is not doing you any favors. And we can argue all that we want about, well, hypothetically it can be done. Yes, absolutely. Hypothetically it can be done. But it's a hell of a lot harder. It's a hell of a lot more inconvenient. And it's going to impact your ability to stick it out consistently. You're setting yourself up for a higher rate of failure on something that a very large percentage of people already fail at due to difficulty. You're making it even more difficult. This is going to impact your adherence. So again, my advice to people is just don't get involved in this silly nonsense to begin with. Don't get involved with it. It's an eating disorder. It's a bizarre cult based upon bizarre ethical ideas. And you're better off just staying away from it. It's not going to improve your health. It's not going to make your life better. It's going to make getting healthy and athletic, and especially peak performance, it's going to make it more difficult. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.